Imagine having the life of your dreams. Not temporary cash and glory, but happiness and inner peace. Explore new ways to be a creator and take your own journey into greatness. Is it possible? What does it take to make that happen? It takes the person known for extreme results. He's called the cage breaker and the ultimate catalyst. Coming back from the brink of death and now crushing it for himself and his clients, this is Your Ultimate Life Podcast with Kellen Flukiger.
All right. Here we are with episode 591, Creating Your Ultimate Life. I'm really stoked. 591. And, when I started this 590 episodes ago, I didn't ever even think about being at this high of a number. I was just doing it. And I don't know if you know the story of how this started, but it plays right into today's episode, which is Action Creates. Action Creates. And we're in the middle of the equation of freedom, the freedom equation, right? And we said knowing and focus and action create liberty. And we defined liberty as both having choices and then the ability to make choices. The podcast started in March, actually April of 2020. In March of 2020, the pandemic was just kicking off. Italy was demonstrating a number, huge numbers of coronavirus cases and going crazy, and I don't know, maybe we all thought we were going to die and the world was going to explode, and we weren't sure how bad this was, and all that was happening, and lockdowns were just starting. First it was 15 days, and, then it was, lockdown, stay home, hide. I remember the first time I went out of the house right after that was going on. Streets were vacant, stores were empty or closed. Gas prices had cut in half. They had simply dropped to 50% of their previous levels. It was unbelievable. It was like a ghost town out of a science fiction movie. And I remember had to go somewhere to do something. Joy and I did. We went, and I just looked around, and I thought, this is incredible. Look at this ghost city. And like the resilient species that we are, we have rebounded from that, and we are now engaged in a healthy and raucous debate about conspiracy and whether or not vaccines are going to kill you and whether or not we should make people have them like driver's licenses and why that example doesn't apply and why outlawing smoking was different and why it's the same and all that crazy stuff. But it's a far cry from the weird, empty landscape that I saw and felt energetically as Joy and I drove wherever we were going that day. And we didn't go very many places, but the roads were empty, there was no one anywhere, and gas was half price. It had gone clear down to 50 cents a liter, and it had been over $1 just before that. So it was just incredible. Anyway, what that has to do with starting the podcast was this. At that time, at the end of March or in the middle of March of 2020, when this was first happening, someone called Joy, someone who knew me, and had been in a mastermind with me and wasn't my client, but knew what I did, and called because they were hoping I was doing some motivational stuff. And so they asked Joy, does Kellen have a podcast? And we didn't at the time, but Joy said yes. And then came downstairs and said, we have a podcast. So Action Creates. I decided, okay, we have a podcast. And that's where the idea for Your Ultimate Life was born. I thought, okay, we're doing pandemic, we're doing shutdowns, we're doing a little bit of fear floating around. People don't know what's going on, don't know what's happening. There may be some people in desperation and all the kinds of things that have now, happened. But I'm going to take action, and I'm going to create this podcast. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it every day. It's not going to be very long, so that's why we're 15 minutes, and that's why we're daily. And now we're up to episode 591, and it's January of 2022, and we'll be hitting 600 pretty quick, and then 730, which is 2 years worth. I don't know exactly when we'll get there because we did miss a few days when we moved in October of 2020. We moved, changed houses here in the city, and, we did, and I did some in the bank, I had some extra, but I don't think I had enough, and so we missed a few days. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Action creates. So I took that action and created this podcast, and what that has to do. And now look at the result. I now have thousands of people who download this, who listen to it, who have been guests on it, whose lives have been changed, whose hearts have been lifted, and the good that has been done because I took that action at that time. Now, what does that have to do with freedom? Well, let's talk about it. Because I have this podcast, I've also now been a guest on at least 100 other podcasts. I now know 100 podcast hosts who are busy in their own way adding good to the world and lifting and blessing lives about different topics. Many of the topics I've talked about are business growth, overcoming obstacles, removing barriers and blocks, lots of them on mental illness, on depression, on addiction. I've also had the opportunity to be on 4 world summits, and it's not only because of the podcast, but it's part of it. Creating this daily podcast has given me a focus of how to get a message out in regular little bits, and that's essential for marketing. So whatever message-based marketing you might have, or message-driven products and services, especially if you're a coach or a consultant or you're helping people do things that are driven from your heart, which is what we talk about here all the time, that little bit of action and bite-sized content marketing is really key to helping people get to know you, feel good about you, want to have more of you, and all of the rest of the stuff that comes with that. So the key here is, how does this fit into the liberty equation? Because I know as I watch people and I see actions, you see people in stores rage at clerks and rude and angry road rage, and you see all this kind of crazy stuff, and to me, it comes down to a feeling of loss of control. People feel like, well, I have no control over my life, and it may be subtle, excuse me, or it may be an overt thing that's happened to them, but they feel like they've got no control over their life. And then in the small areas they do have control, they go crazy and they go off completely on some poor clerk or teller or something like that, so much so that we have signs that, rudeness or abuse of staff will not be tolerated. Every time I had to go get blood drawn, which unfortunately in these last 2 years has been a lot, having had a number of things happen, I see a sign there in the lab that says, abuse of staff won't be tolerated. And I'm sitting here thinking, what in the world would possess someone to get angry with or abuse, verbally, emotionally, whatever, a staff member of someone who's there to serve them, to draw some blood or run another test because their doctors asked them to, and it's for their health and benefit. How have we deteriorated so much that we have to do post those kind of signs and even think about that? Anyway, the topic for a different day. Action created all kinds of business for me. It's created all kinds of relationships and friendships. It's brought people to my book challenge that I can help write books. I've helped people write books. I have more. I just got on a podcast this morning where the guy wants to write a book, and he's going to check out the book challenge we're starting in just a couple of weeks. So that came from being on somebody's podcast, which came from my doing this podcast, which came from taking action, and action created liberty. What is liberty? An abundance of choice and an ability to make choice. So I have more liberty, more freedom because I took this action. All right, so we know that the equation is learning, focus, action. Liberty is created by learning, focus, and action. So we talked about the learning part. We talked about the focus yesterday. Today, I want to talk about 3 things. One is no focus, procrastinate. One is, or learn, focus, procrastinate. One is start, stop, start over, stop, start over, right? And then the third one is ready, fire, steer. Ready, fire, steer. Or another way to say that is execute, evaluate, adjust. That execute, evaluate, adjust, ready, fire, steer comes right out of the results equation, which is a very useful and powerful book that I wrote about turning all of your dreams into completed reality. Like you have a dream. I want to ask you why it isn't done. Why don't you have whatever it is that you dream? Now, I have a dream. One of my dreams is to get all my books that I've written, all 15 of them, onto Audible. I don't have that done yet. Why isn't that done yet, Kellen? I haven't created time to do that. I know exactly how to do it. I'm an expert in audio. I know exactly how to record it, exactly how to sweeten the audio, exactly how to turn it into the ACX format Amazon wants. I know all that precisely. But my learning isn't active yet. I've got one done, and I'm in the middle of the second one. So Meeting God at the Door is done in Audible format. Book of Context is partway done. I'll finish that in a little bit. So that's a goal. Action is creating that. So that's in progress. The three things that I read, learn, focus, procrastinate, that comes from fear. Learn, focus, procrastinate. We don't do things. We procrastinate because we believe we're going to fail, because we think we're not good enough. We think that nobody will care, that nobody will buy our product or service, that people will laugh at our efforts. I have a song called Sing, incidentally, and it talks about sing the song you came to sing. And one of the verses says, or one of the choruses says, maybe they'll come running out to laugh at me if I sing the song I came to sing. If I sing the song I want to sing, if my heartstrings fill the air, then maybe they'll come running out to laugh at me. Because in the end, nobody really cares. That's kind of a negative take, and that's the first chorus, and then it builds over time to the next one. And if you haven't heard that, go back in the episodes and find the one named Sing. It's the debut of that. I tell a little story about it, and then I play the song, and you can hear the story. And that's one of the songs that came from the companion album, Promise and Power, from the book Down from the Gallows, which is volume 2 in the Tightrope of Depression series. All of these things that I talk about are available on the website if you're interested. Music's on Spotify and Amazon and Apple and everywhere else. All right, action. We procrastinate when we're afraid. We're afraid we're going to fail. We're afraid somebody's going to laugh. We're afraid it's not good enough, and so forth. That is a common thing. It's also a very sad thing, because that deprives me and everyone else of your genius. It deprives me of participating in your gifts, of being lifted and blessed by your skill, your story, your talent, and your love. I feel ripped off. I want some. So don't procrastinate. Another one is we start, stop, start over, stop, start, over and over again. That happens sometimes because we procrastinate, but sometimes it's because we don't have priorities or we're trying to do too many things. It's not uncommon, especially for people that have a lot of interest, to do this for a little while. Oh, go and go over here, do that. And then, things get half done, a third done, and there's all this unfinished stuff, either on an actual shelf or on a virtual shelf. Again, that serves no one. Maybe it was fun for a minute to do it, but you didn't complete the opportunity to serve me and create the divine life, and others, not just me, but others too, by serving with your divine gifts. So action isn't just random frenzied activity. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, but it's focused, clear, outcome-driven action. I use a set of modifiers or descriptions when I talk about action. It's DCM, direct, consistent, motivated action. I did an episode on each of those because a lot of people just do stuff. They go do it, and it's not really the right stuff, or it doesn't accomplish what they want. The way I help people get over that is to remind them that action needs to be direct action, the action most likely to accomplish something. Consistent action means it matters that we do it every day or every appropriate interval. And motivated action means we go at it with all of our hearts, all in intentionally. So DCM, direct, consistent, motivated action, is what matters. And when we start, stop, and start over and that kind of thing, sometimes it's because, that's not good enough. I need to do it over again. I have to do all that work over again. So I don't. And then again, we waste time and wait. Or we aren't clear, and so we start something, and then we change direction, we get discouraged. All of those things are reasons that action fails, and we don't finish, and therefore create the liberty we're looking for in our ultimate lives. Planning and having direct, consistent, motivated action that is consistent, not stopping and starting, is what matters. I notice that a lot when I teach piano, because people that practice every day, even a few minutes, do way better than people that binge practice. The last piece is fire, steer, or ready, fire, steer, execute, evaluate, adjust. Now, this is a good way to do it. It's the most productive, most powerful way to take action. Get as ready as you need to be and then pull the trigger. Fire, go. Then jump on the projectile, the bullet, or whatever, and steer. Like everything changes so fast. Markets change. People's attitudes change. Your own experience changes. So get ready to steer and enjoy the ride. So often I hear, I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to waste time. Well, you waste 1,000,000 years by not starting. And then by the time you get ready to start, everything's changed. And then all your prep doesn't matter anyway. Ready, fire, steer. Jump on the bullet and grab the steering wheel. A more business-like way to say that is execute, evaluate, adjust. Do whatever you're going to do. When I started the podcast, I just did it. And I started doing it and picked topics and grew. And now it's grown into something I have very organized and it's planned. But that's because I executed and I evaluated it. What did it do? Did it work? Did it not work? Do I feel good? Am I adding good to the world? And then I made appropriate adjustments. And there's no drama with that. I'm bad because I wasted time. Get over it. Execute, evaluate, adjust. Ready, fire, steer. That kind of action creates outcomes, and in the context of the freedom equation, where learning, focus, and action create liberty, it creates choices, it creates freedom, which is liberty, because liberty I've defined as an abundance of choices and the ability to make those choices. That's another piece of creating your ultimate life.
Open your heart and this time around.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope that you take it deeply into your heart and decide for yourself how you can create anything you desire. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback and topic suggestions. Until tomorrow, this is Your Ultimate Life with host Kellen Flukiger.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on